All right, welcome back to Checkpoint. We thank you for staying with us and we thank you for continuing to send in your feedback. The SMS number is 22155. That's absolutely free. And on Twitter at KTN News, at Yvonne Okwara. The hashtag to use is Checkpoint. Has the NCIC succeeded in curbing cases of hate speech? An important time in the country, a lot of political rhetoric. Who is there to wield the big stick when we're seeing all the acquittals in the judiciary so far? So keep your comments coming in on that. To discuss this with me this evening, on my right is Professor Michael Wainaina, who's our resident analyst. Good to see you again. And on my left is Joy Brenda Mdivo, who's an advocate and a member of, council member of the Law Society of Kenya, governance and expert as well. But we want to start on phone with the chair of the NCIC, that's the National Cohesion Integration Commission. He was supposed to be at our Mombasa Road studios, but he'll join us on tonight. Let's just start by a quick reaction with the acquittal in the judiciary of Mishimboko. Hers is not the first. There's many others, and we start to wonder, how the fight against hate speech will carry on in the country with a number of these things, considering we're in the campaign season. What's your reaction to all of this that's been taking place?
Well, first of all, thanks for getting hold of me on phone. I am shocked, by the way, by the series of acquittals on hate speech, which seem also to be synchronized. We've had a series within 1 week of acquittals on what I could only describe some of them as on very strange grounds. I do not know whether, as a matter of fact, the judiciary does take into consideration the public good and whether or not they actually think that they live in another country and another planet. I am shocked.
All right, let's talk about the evidence, because in a number of the cases that we're seeing acquittals, the judges consistently seem to say one thing, that the prosecution presents weak evidence that cannot sustain a conviction. And some say that then that goes back to the doorstep of the Integration Commission because you have investigatory powers. So is it perhaps the work of the commission that is failing in this process of ensuring convictions?
Well, first of all, you are wrong. You are absolutely wrong. We do not have investigatory powers. All investigatory powers under law are in the hands of the police, particularly the Criminal Investigation Department. But we do have attached to us a few investigators, but we also work closely with the Directorate of Criminal Investigation to get evidence. But there are a series of players in this. Chief among them is the press. It is the press that actually reports what has been said in many public functions. And they also, on occasion, provide clips, either to us, or they put it on YouTube, or they finally end up on your television set or in newspaper. But when that does happen, a flood of things happen, including a demand by the public, rightfully, to get those responsible charged. And as you know, you must get the evidence to be able to go to court. Oftentimes, when we reach out to the responsible journalists who aired or put in print in the first place that utterances, the most common response is that we cannot disclose our sources because it's against our professional etiquette, and they deny to go to court. So that is hurdle number one. Number two, if it is sent by a member of the general public, more often than not, they too may not be able to come and stand in court and say, I took that picture or I recorded that voice, and therefore we have a lot of challenges. But that notwithstanding, there have been cases where sufficient evidence has been presented to the Director of Public Prosecution, who in turn charges those suspects, because you must understand that it is again the sole duty of the Director of Public Prosecution to prefer charges against anybody. It's not the business of NCIC.
Okay.
We don't have that responsibility. But of course, we work very closely with those other government agencies. But you cannot deny the fact that some of the acquittals have been based on very superior grounds.
Okay, all right. Just stay with us on phone if you can as we continue to have this discussion. I'd like to engage my studio guests for that. Joe, I want to start with you. You've heard what the chair of the NCIC has said, talking about the media, providing the sources, and indeed, the DPP also being the one that presents this case and decides we have enough to charge them. What is the legal framework for this, and do you agree with what the chair is saying?
One thing that the chair said is that they do not have power to investigate, which I find to be less than candid, because if you read the NCIC Act, one of their functions is to actually investigate, and they've been given equal power to what a High Court judge would have, the power to summon, the power to take evidence, to even compensate witnesses for their time. That's one thing. It is within their ambit. They can do it. Secondly, if you are a body that is tasked with looking into such matters, I don't see why you're relying on journalists for your evidence. You should have people attending rallies, collecting the evidence for yourself, primary evidence, because this was a public place. It was not a private meeting. They did not have to rely on insider information. It's something that they could have done for themselves if they were serious about prosecuting these cases. Another thing that I've had Ole Kaparo saying, which, by the way, is a man that I respect, is that the courts sometimes are failing because they dismiss matters because the evidence is lacking and is wanting. You must understand that when it is a criminal matter, the standard of proof is high. It is beyond reasonable doubt. If you cannot meet that threshold, the judicial officer has got no responsibility to try and make a case for somebody because
the chairman
there's
is
public
saying,
interest,
yeah,
there's public
interest and
that
public
is not
outcry.
what rules them. What rules them is the rule of law. And if the law says that the evidence is lacking, it is lacking, it is wanting. Failing by the police? Maybe. Failing by the CID? Maybe. Maybe the prosecution is wanting, possibly. But whatever the situation, if an outcome is lack of evidence, then that is the outcome. The magistrate cannot go ahead and convict because there's a public outcry. That's not how it works.
Okay. There's also the political aspect of this, Prof. Like we've seen, they say sometimes, people of a high profile can easily get away with some of the statements. And by the way, those cases that we have highlighted a few minutes ago aren't the only ones. There's a number, including that of Chirawa Limakwere, and all he had to do was apologize. And yet for other people, the threshold, perhaps they say, is much lower. The political aspect of curbing hate speech?
The political aspect of curbing hate speech worries me, and I will tell you why it does, in two ways. One, it does seem that the laws that govern NCIC or its operations or its objectives or its reason for existence were crafted so that it would fail. And therefore we have a commission and a chairman who is saying, I have a job, but I do not have the tools that I need to do this job. My problem with that is twofold. If it was made to fail, then what do we do about the issues of cohesion and integration? Because they are serious issues in this country, especially as we go towards elections, as you said. That's number one. Number two, the public service and the people who are entrusted with these things in this country need to get to a level where somebody feels that if they cannot do the job that they have been given to do, if you have been given a job and you have not been given the instruments to do the job, do something about it. Either get the instruments or tell Kenyans, this job is not doable, I am going home. But you cannot sit in a public office and every time you are lamenting that you do not have the instruments, you do not have the laws, you do not have the wherewithal to do the job that Kenyans expect you to do. The issue of integration and cohesion is a huge issue in this country. As we approach the elections, I don't think there's any issue that is actually bigger than the issue of integration and cohesion. So we cannot have a commission that claims that they do not have the instruments to do what Kenyans expect to be done, and they are still in office.
Okay, that's an interesting one. I don't know if we still have the chairman on phone, because it would be interesting to get his response to that. Bwana Chairman, I don't know if you've had a chance to listen to what Professor Wainaina says, but his submission basically is if the commission has not been given the law, the instruments, and the powers to fight hate speech, that perhaps he should, sound the alarm or resign.
I did. I did listen. Hello?
Yes. So what are your thoughts? He says if you don't have the instruments to do your work, then you should either be raising the alarm, going back to Parliament to get the laws fixed, or simply step aside. What's your reaction to that?
Well, let me just first commend him, his first part of his argument, that we have a commission. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Bwana Chairman. Carry on.
That we do have a commission that was quickly put in place as a result of the conflict in 2007, 2008. Mm-hmm. It was quickly done. Mm-hmm. It was not homegrown. It was an imposition. It was put in place because we had a problem to sort out there and then. And I do not know whether to agree with him on his assertion that it was crafted in such a way that it had to fail. But let's also come back to reality. Reality is, and I want also to take issue with the lady advocate. I presume she's the advocate.
Yes.
I want to take issue with her because she seems to think that NCIC has all the people it requires to send to various places to go and gather that evidence. As a matter of fact, the total complement of NCIC, including the professional staff, the drivers, the team makers, everybody, is just under 50 people to serve the whole country. Indeed, the professional staff are under 30. I mean, under 30. You must understand that to be a serious deficiency. I also understood Professor Wainaina requesting that if we saw that we have a problem, we should talk about it. I honestly don't know whether he watches his news. On many times, I have made a general complaint about the inadequacy of A, the funding provided to NCIC, and two, the human element, the personnel, and thirdly, the law, the requisite law that makes NCIC operate inadequately. I have made those complaints and presentations. I have made a proposal to Parliament on several occasions, including presenting to them draft amendments to the NCIC Act 2 years ago. They are almost going home without considering that.
Okay.
I have valiantly tried to do what has to be done. Finally, it is not fair to just look at NCIC and hate speech. We have done a lot of work in reconciling communities across Kenya. And also remember this, from Marsabit, Mandera, Isiolo, Samburu, Baringo, the one that is on fire right now, Nandi and Kakamega, Nandi and Kisumu, Mount Elgon, name it. We have made tremendous effort. And a lot of Kenyans in those areas today are living in peace thanks to NCIC. But we seem to think about NCIC and hate speech. Finally, and this is a common Kenyan malady, everybody seems to think that somebody else must do this apart from me. Let me tell you, the issue of cohesion, of hate, of incitement, of warmongering is a national problem. We need a combined effort of every right-thinking Kenyan to combat it. You and the panelists included.
All right, okay. Just very quickly then, because you've talked about the work in integrating communities and reconciling them, but you've also mentioned a number of the constraints, funding, personnel, and the laws. So answer this question that we have put out to our viewers tonight. Because of considering all of these constraints, would you say the NCIC has been successful in curbing hate speech in the country?
Hello?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can now.
Okay, great. So we're asking, considering all the constraints you have talked about, funding, personnel, and the laws, please answer the question that we're putting to our viewers, whether you think your commission has been successful in curbing hate speech.
It has not. And it has not because of various factors. Some of it is external to it. We could have done better. I began this interview with a lamentation that indeed we are unable to fight this monster of hate speech because we are not allowed to do so from every quarter.
Okay.
From the legal aspect to the prosecution to the court itself. We cannot do all those things ourselves.
All right, okay.
Everybody must play their role.
All right, so interesting what the chairman is saying. He actually admits they have not. He's talking about an imposition after the 2007-2008, and yet we have remained in this situation knowing we have this challenge from that point in time. So where does this leave us now?
You know, when you read the NCIC Act, one thing that stands out is the way the law was crafted, which is, I join issue with Honorable Kaparo. It was drafted in such a way that it is reactionary. When you read it, it doesn't lend itself, you don't know what mischief is being cured. Don't discriminate, don't insult, don't abuse. Things that if we were to break it down legally and say, okay, fine, what then is an insult worthy of this charge? It is something that is so difficult to pin down. So the law itself has been crafted in a way that it is easy to sneak out and wriggle out of it. Now, if you look at it vis-a-vis, and this is a culture, by the way, we have in Kenya. You've had this accusation with the EACC saying that the law was crafted in a way that when it became expedient, you can defeat it.
That's exactly what Prof is saying,
And the weakness, now what happens is you have judicial officers who, for example, in the penal code, there is actually a crime that if you make utterances that incite people to warlike behavior, then you are liable to life imprisonment. But here we come and we are relying on this law on hate speech, where the fine is $1 million bob. I mean, these days, lotto winners have $1 million bob. It's one of those things that makes you wonder, when they were drafting this law, what was the mischief they were trying to cure? In my opinion, it was crafted with politicians in mind, so that you look like you're doing something, but in actual fact, you're doing a lot of nothing.
Okay.
Because if the rubber meets the road, they'll all get off the hook. It's There's only one consequence.
Interesting that you talk about that, because I'd like us to put up on screen, because a lot of people on social media as well, when we said we're going to discuss this, asked, so what is the definition of hate speech, and do we really understand it, considering Babu Owino himself admitted to making the remarks, but said,
Yes.
well, you know, I mean, I said what I said, but I didn't mean any harm.
Exactly.
And it's good that we have a professor in literature, and perhaps we can take a look at this text, which is from section 13 of the NCIC Act. So it's a bit wordy, but bear with me, because I think I find this rather interesting. We'll have it on our screens in just a moment. But the section of that act says that a person who uses threatening, abusive, or insulting words or behavior, I'm hoping we can have it on our screens really quickly so our viewers can follow this text with us, shows or plays a recording of visual images which is threatening, abusive, or insulting, or involves the use of threatening, abusive, or insulting words, commits an offense. Prof, here's where it gets interesting. If such a person intends thereby to stir up ethnic hatred. Okay, so the law is also supposed to understand intent? Isn't that where it gets a little confusing? What are your thoughts on this?
It not only gets a little confusing, it gets a lot confusing. One of the things that we have to appreciate, Yvonne, is that hate speech is largely coded language.
Yeah.
Okay, it is not even the section that you have read does not even start to do it justice, because when we are dealing with issues of hate speech, I can give you the example of Rwanda. Rwanda, they were using the word cockroaches,
yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
And they were saying kill the cockroaches.
Nyenze, in fact, is
yes,
the word,
yes.
yeah.
And if you ask the person who has uttered that and say that it is hate speech, they will say, I'm just telling people to kill the cockroaches in their kitchen.
Right.
When the genocide happened, we got to know who the cockroaches were, and they were not the ones in the kitchen. They were Tutsis and moderate Hutus. Looking at the law that we have, and this is why I have said that we have ourselves a law and a commission that was set to fail from the very beginning. What Mr. Ole Kaparo is shockingly honest and sincere. He is telling Kenyans, you are on your own. I have been in this. I have tried what I can do. I don't have the instruments. I have failed. If you are looking for reconciliation and integration going to the elections, you are on your own. My challenge with this, Yvonne, is that we have a system that is generally so dysfunctional that the president blames the judiciary. The judiciary blames the DPP. DPP blames the police.
Yeah.
The police blame everybody. That nobody says the buck stops here. This has got to be done. Yet, we, as the people of Kenya, are paying taxes. They are paying salaries to the commissions, to all government workers, including Ole Kaparo. He is drawing a salary every month. And I hope that we are going to get to a level in this country where public servants can be level with the people of Kenya and say, you know what, this thing was cobbled up in 2007 to hoodwink the people who wanted peace.
Exactly.
I don't think that this thing was set up to bring integration and reconciliation. I think you are being taken for a ride, and I'm not going to be part of this.
Okay, interesting. I don't know if we have the chair, but let's see if we can put him to task over those statements, including the statements that he made. Ole Kaparo, you said this was, and I quote, an imposition on the people. You've lamented some of the challenges that are there, and you've even gone on to say that you know, every time there's a case of hate speech or cohesion in the country, everybody looks to you, yet it is something that all Kenyans should do. But to be fair, Ole Kaparo, you are the chair of the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, for which you draw a salary. Should there not be a champion that fights this cause, and that is the commission and yourself as the chair?
I have done my best. I continue to do my best. And I want to tell those blaming us that it is very easy to blame, but very difficult to execute. As I have said in the past, a few minutes ago, we have done a lot of work in reconciling communities across Kenya. It is a fact. Those people can sleep today. They were not sleeping then. If that is not a service to Kenyans, I don't know what is. The issue of hate speech, I agree with the professor or the lady lawyer that crafters of the law are also the consumers of charges of hate speech. And they probably made it not so strong to be able to catch it. Again, the tragedy is, if you want to change that law, you must return to politicians.
The same politicians.
We have done that. We have had workshops upon workshops with them. We've drafted amendments to the law. We've sent it to Parliament. It is pending in Parliament. But I don't like the whole idea of the Professor Wainaina seeming to live in a very high pedestal where he doesn't do any wrong. Everybody else is at fault. He is the best in the world. I doubt it. There are limitations. Even where he works, there must be limitations. There must be some things he just can't fix. And it is also not right to demand that every time you get a challenge, you must quit. Then we would be having a nation of quitters. And I am not of that type. And by the way, for the information of this professor, I have a track record. And I think he honestly knows that I have done as well as I could in my past, and I continue to do so today. My call to the Kenyan people, there is no fun in hating each other.
Okay.
Indeed, we shouldn't be debarred from doing bad things because we go to jail. Let's do what is honorable.
Okay.
And it is even biblical. Love thy neighbor as you love thyself. I'll continue to do what I can, and I hope everybody else does what they ought to do, including those who are being absolved of blame, when that blame could squarely be entirely on them.
Okay, thank you, Bwana Chairman. And of course, he's sort of starting to wrap this up a little bit, and we thank you for that. And we'll come to you for a reaction on that. But I'd like to talk about, what the situation was like in 2013, because then the deputy and the president and his deputy then were facing the ICC cases, and many said that the atmosphere then was a little bit different, that politicians were a little more cautious because there was, the looming ICC cases, over 2 of them. Well, we know what happened thereafter. But, there's that big stick, that can be wielded.
Exactly.
The ICC is not there now. Commissioner, the chair of the commission, is saying, well, these are the constraints I have. They have tried to work with communities, but in terms of putting politicians on notice, that's a bit of a challenge. What's your sense between the 2013 campaign and now, considering the events then and the events now? People are getting off with their cases at the courts, and at the time, ICC was, looming large over our heads.
The ICC case was in fact, it became one of the coalescing questions for the last general election. It became, we need to defend ourselves. So it became one of the campaign issues. So are we voting for criminals on one hand, on the other side, we are being persecuted. And that sword of Damocles was important because moving forward, even the atmosphere in the country, people were careful about their utterances, what they got out of the people, so that they were not seen to incite, because that was a threat. Now, remember earlier I alluded to what is in the penal code. And the penal code is very categorical, that if you incite people without lawful authority to make preparation to generate warlike activity, then you're liable to imprisonment for life. Now, why
So
that's
it's already in the penal code?
We already have it in the penal code. We have had it since 1967. And it's one of those things where we apply the law in a manner that is favorable. If somebody issues an utterance and says, a certain ethnic group, if you carry on like this, then chumachenu kimotoni, that to me is incitement to warlike activity. That is something that can be proved using the words that have been uttered and the response from the crowd that you're speaking to. But now when you choose to go with this very ambiguous, I mean,
so do we need that very, as you call it, very ambiguous NCIC Act? Do we need the commission at all?
That act needs to just go away. It is a very badly drafted law because it was drafted with so much ambiguity. Because it's like, for example, the law on treason. We've had this criticism before. When you even imagine the death of the president, it is actionable. Yeah. How are you going to prove that I'm imagining the death of a president beyond reasonable doubt in a courtroom? It's next to impossible. Or like witchcraft. If you do activities with the aim of harming others and it is... These are spiritual things. Where do you pin somebody down? Right. So there are some laws in Kenya that were drafted, in my opinion, specifically to provide the back door for escape. So it is meant to give people the impression that there's something going on. So this general election, ICC is no longer a threat. This general election, even the local courts is no longer a threat. Yeah. So people actually, it's open dark season. They're shooting in the air and there is nobody to tell them this is wrong. But like I pointed out, if our law enforcers just looked at what we already have and applied it strictly, in my opinion, the courts need the support from the DPP's office and from the investigators to be able to just put one person away. Yeah. Look at what happened when Honorable Mudhama and the others, the famous six, Pangani six, right. When they spent the 4 nights, I mean, the atmosphere across the political divide, it was immediate. We just need decisive action. One person will make a difference in the entire scenario.
Okay. So NCIC, does it help? And where do you see us going, towards August? Because, by the way, it's not just for politicians, but it also sets a precedent for ordinary Kenyans like, exactly. Like you, like me. So, if so-and-so can say this, then, I'll post something and it's a pseudonym and I'm hiding behind a keyboard. So where does this leave us, Prof, ahead of August?
It leaves us in a very dangerous position. One of the things that I would like to say about Mr. Kaparo's response to my concerns is that we as Kenyans are honestly tired. And unfortunately, when we as Kenyans ask for results, when we ask for outputs, we are called utopian, we are called idealist. We are called people who don't get satisfied. We are called people who want too much. Is it, Yvonne, is it too much for Kenyans to ask a commission for integration and cohesion to ask for integration and cohesion? I don't think it is too much. That is the name of the commission. The chairman of the commission has agreed that he has failed. And the Kenyan people are saying, when you fail, do you sit down and continue telling us you have failed and you have tried and you have done your best, or do we look for other options? That is number one. Number two, there is an argument again that Mr. Kaparo, with all due respect, is making in terms of this is our problem, all of us, okay? Then why do we have a commission? Why do we have a government? Why do we have anything? It is one of the arguments that...
But isn't there merit, though, to what he says, that it's something collective that should happen on an individual level and perhaps grows to community and national level?
Yvonne, we have been told that corruption is our problem, all of us. We have been told that ethnicity is our problem, all of us. We have been told that security is... The last time I checked, there was a government in this country. Why do we elect a government? Of what use is a government whose job is to tell you, by the way, this has nothing to do with me. You're on your own. The job of government is to govern and to give services to the people for which it has been elected. If it cannot be able to do that for whatever reason, then it needs to recuse itself, and we, the people, need to replace it with a government that is going to deliver. That is number two. Number three, Mr. Kaparo is talking about morality. Okay, he's quoting the Bible, and I think it is a good thing to quote the Bible. It's a good thing to talk about morality when you're dealing with issues of cohesion and issues of integration and issues of hate speech. But there is a difference between morality and behavior. Morality cannot be legislated. You cannot make people love other people. But behavior can be regulated.
Thank you.
His job is to regulate behavior and make sure that nobody, no Mishiboko, stands on a rostrum and refers to an ethnic group and says, Chuma chako kiko motoni. If she does that and gets away with it, what he is telling us is that we are unable to regulate behavior that is warlike, and what we should expect in August is what that behavior would result to. Lastly, Yvonne, I get a sense, Yvonne, that Kenyans imagine that they are very special. Or, let me put it differently, Kenyans imagine that the Rwandese are mad people. Okay? They are mad people who had no education, who are, okay, they're just people who don't think. They were not mad people. They were a society that all the things that are related to genocide came together. What are these three things? Number one, identity politics. Number two, a rogue political class. And number three, a spark. In this country, we have two of those things in place. Number one, identity politics. Number two, a rogue political class. We are only waiting for the third one, the spark. And we have been told that something is going to happen to some of us if some people do not win the election in August. So if we have all the ingredients of conflagration have lined themselves up, and you have a chairman of the Cohesion and Integration Commission saying, there is nothing I can do about it, I have done the best, only a very naive person wouldn't see where the country is headed.
All right, do we have the chairman? I'd like to give him the last word on this one. In just about a minute, you've heard from Joy, and she's talking about the laws and the fact that they cannot help us as they are. The Prof is saying we're hurtling down to a very dangerous path. What's your last word, Bwana Chair?
Well, my last word is first, Joy, I agree with you. The law was badly drafted. I have tried to access this. I have drafted requisite amendments. They are pending in Parliament. I hope they will consider it before Parliament ends its term. For Professor, I hope someday you will appreciate that picking fault is the easiest thing in the world. You refuse completely to listen to what I have said, that we have across the country reconciled several warring Kenyan communities successfully. It is, and we continue to do so. And we cannot obviously be expected. We cannot be expected as a commission to get into the hearts of people who cannot think anything good of others. But we will continue to take them to court. By the way, hate speech. I'm telling you, last week, I gave 390 voice recorders to people we have hired as cohesion monitors across the country. We gave a similar number of camcorders to those cohesion monitors we have employed to be able to visit every rally across the country so that we don't depend on the reporters, we don't depend on police alone. They will be working together with police. We have also given specialized cameras to policemen, 47 of them, one per county, a specialized camera that can pick the voice and the picture at a 200-meter radius, very, very powerful voice recorder. We just finished the training last Friday. They are back to their counties.
Okay.
You will see them on those rallies, and I hope they will also be able to get Professor Wainaina in some place. And then we can talk about it.
All right, thank you very much, Bwana Chair. Francis Ole Kaparo, who's the chair of the National Cohesion Integration Commission, he says they will be out there and they will be looking for you and for all of us indeed. Thanks for that, Bwana Chairman. Also, thank you, Professor Michael Wainaina, who's our resident analyst, Joy Brenda Mdivo, who's an advocate. The chair of the commission says he is not a quitter. They have reconciled communities. They may have failed in curbing hate speech, but there's a lot they've done. Prof says we're on our own and hurtling down towards a dangerous path. Joy says the legislation is all wrong and will not help us in this war against hate speech. What do you think? Please continue to give us your thoughts at KTN News, at Yvonne Okwara. The hashtag is Checkpoint 22155. I'll also be looking out for your SMSs. You're watching Checkpoint. We'll be right back.